In today's video, we'll be discussing how you can create your own yandere characters in your manga, comic, or light novel. So first of all, what is a yandere character? A yandere character is a character type who represents their affection for another character in a way that's very obsessive. Some common examples of yandere characters include characters like Yuno from Future Diary, Shion Sonozaki from Higurashi, and Griffith from Berserk. Please keep in mind that when it comes to yandere characters, this character type does not necessarily need to be romantic, and yanderes can also be platonic or even family related as well. This is a character type who is very obsessive and is also determined to manipulate the characters around them in order to get what they want. So let's discuss how you can create your own yandere character type for your manga, comic, or light novel, or just for fun. First of all, when it comes to creating a yandere character, it's important to first consider who their senpai is. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to use the term senpai to describe the character that the yandere character is obsessed with, but it may not necessarily be an actual senpai. This could be someone that they see romantically, it could be someone who they see as a friend, or it could even be someone in their family. Whoever it is, consider who this yandere is obsessed with and why they are obsessed with this character. In many cases, the senpai character may have treated the yandere kindly in the past. When there was no one else looking out for the yandere, this senpai character may have been there and looked out for them when they really needed it the most. They may have even been kind to them when they were really struggling with something, or saved them, or help them in some other way, which has caused the yandere to idolize their senpai character, to put them on a pedestal, and to see them as the epitome of the perfect person for this yandere character. It's really important to keep in mind that the way the yandere sees the senpai is not a healthy dynamic. They're not seeing this character realistically, but instead they are seeing them in a way that the yandere sees them as the perfect person in their perfect idolized reality. And that's important to keep in mind when writing this character type. A yandere character does not see the world in straightforward ways like other people might see the world. A yandere has their own perception of the reality. They see their world and reality as something that they can control or manipulate. They try to put certain events in a perspective where they can rationalize it so it will fit into their desired world, what they really want the world to look like. So even if there are other characters out there who try to stop them from being with their senpai, or even if the dynamic between them and their senpai is very unhealthy, the yandere character is going to rationalize things in a way that makes it seem like it's healthy. For example, if the senpai character tries to keep away from the yandere character may rationalize this as saying, oh, the senpai character is actually just really shy. Maybe they do still like me, they're just really shy. So it's always important to consider what the yandere's internal world looks like. How do they see the rest of the world around them? And how does this affect the way they treat their senpai character or other characters in their lives? Now, as well as this, it's also really important to consider what kind of tendencies this yandere character has. Not all yandere characters will be very violent. There are a variety of yandere character types. It is important to consider what kind of yandere you're creating. There's yandere characters who are very good at manipulating the other characters around them. They're very manipulative and controlling. They can understand everyone else's personalities and know how to use that to their advantage. In this instance, their personality and their emotions are their weapon. And then of course there's yanderes which are very violent. Maybe they're really good at using a particular type of weapon. And all of this is also done under the delusion that they are protecting their senpai. So it's really important to keep that in mind. And then of course you have other types of yanderes. There might be ones that are more of a stalker type of yandere, but they won't actually get directly involved. They'll keep living in their delusional world, still imagining situations with their senpai, but not actually getting close enough for anything to actually happen. And then of course there might be yanderes which are very clingy types of yanderes who are very close to the senpai, but they might not actually do anything bad. It's just that they seem very obsessive, and that can in itself feel rather dangerous, even if they're not actually physically or mentally dangerous. So it's really important to consider what kind of yandere you are wanting to create in your story, because there are a variety of types, and depending on these types, it changes the way your yandere will treat the senpai character and treat the other characters in the story, and it will also change the way that the senpai character will react to the yandere. This also changes the type of weapon that the yandere character would have. For example, in many cases a yandere character might have an actual weapon, like a knife or a sword or something like that. But it's not always required that the yandere character has a weapon, and in fact, the yandere character's use of manipulation or control tactics can be just as effective, if not even more effective, than an actual physical weapon. So when you're creating your yandere character, consider what their actual weapon is, whether it is an actual physical item that they use, or whether they use their manipulation and control tactics in order to control the people around them to make them fit their desired reality, what they want their worlds or envision it to be like. As you create your yandere character, you also want to consider where they got these tendencies from. Where did this really stem from to begin with? And I think when looking at this, it's really important to look at their backstory as well. What events in their backstory shaped them to become the character that they are today? For example, when they were a child, maybe the people around them were people that they could not trust. Maybe they were abandoned by the people around them. They learned that the world might have been a very dangerous or hostile place. And so in order to feel safer, maybe they became someone who obsessed about certain people in order to feel like they were safe or feel like they had control over a situation. Or in other examples, maybe the yandere character was surrounded by people who matched these tendencies. Maybe all of the relationships around them that they saw were also very toxic, and so that's where they got an unhealthy way of seeing the world, and they ended up thinking that that was normal and that was how they needed to be. Or maybe at one point the yandere character was very normal, but then there was a situation that caused them to snap and change into this yandere character where they were faced with a struggle or a difficult event, and then they ended up feeling like the senpai character was the only one they could trust, which causes them to obsess over the senpai character. So whatever it is, you need to understand your yandere character's backstory above all else, because this backstory is what explains these yandere tendencies and why they are the character that they are today. What caused them to become this manipulative and controlling character type? And usually that would stem from some sort of fear or abandonment in their childhood, but it can stem from other reasons too. It also comes down to what kind of yandere you're creating, because if your yandere character is in general very toxic and manipulative, maybe that kind of dynamic is something that they also saw when they were younger, and so they're just recreating that dynamic as an older character. Or it could be that maybe they went through their own struggles in the past and this caused them to have a lot of trust issues, and because they don't trust anyone, they end up obsessing over a particular character in a way to try and get some control. So it really depends on what type of yandere you're creating and what kind of backstory they have experienced. So as you're creating your yandere character, it's important to consider how they know this senpai character and how this causes them to have more opportunities to be obsessive or controlling to this character. In many yandere series, usually the characters will be at school, and maybe the yandere character will meet the senpai character in school, hence where the term senpai comes from. But it does not necessarily need to be in a school environment, it could be in a huge variety of environments. So it's important to consider how the yandere can interact with this senpai, and if this adds to the delusion more, maybe when the yandere is talking to the senpai face to face, the yandere may put on a false perception of what they think the senpai would like. They might appear really nice and friendly and bubbly, but it's all manipulation, it's not genuine. The truth is the yandere character has a very difficult perception of what true emotions feel like, and so they end up trying to make themselves feel certain emotions or appear to have certain emotions in order to fit in with other people, which is part of the manipulation. And so when the senpai character then talks to the yandere, they may end up having a false perception of what they think the yandere character is like. And the yandere character will try to keep up this false perception in order to make sure that the senpai likes them. And so that's why it's important to consider where the senpai and the yandere character interact. If it's in a school environment, then it may be easier for them to interact on a daily basis. But keep in mind too that in very creepy circumstances, the senpai character may not even know the yandere character that well. And that's where that really creepy yandere behavior comes in. The yandere likely doesn't even realize that their behavior is creepy or controlling, because that is the way that they gain their sense of control. You also need to consider as well when it comes to more family connections. A good example I can think of is Akito in Fruits Basket, who's extremely manipulative and possessive of all the characters in the Zodiac. You have to keep in mind that even if the characters may not see this character all that often, there is still that shadow of control over them. So they still feel like they are being controlled despite the fact that they may not see or talk to Akito that often. So you need to consider how the yandere interacts with the senpai and how different environments may influence the dynamic they have. When you create your yandere character, it's important to consider that the yandere character believes that they are right. As we discussed before, the yandere sort of creates this delusional world where everything they see and all the events around them, they have their own false perception of it. And so when the yandere is taking certain actions in your story, they're going to believe that their actions are right, that they are the one who's right and all the other characters are wrong. So if the senpai character is afraid of the yandere, then the yandere is going to take this as a different perception. They're not going to take it that the senpai's afraid. They're going to say, well, they're shy, or they're nervous, or maybe they're just like a bit embarrassed, but they definitely like me. It's just that they're, a little bit shy. So the yandere does not see things in the same way that other characters do, which is very unhealthy and adds to the unhealthy dynamic. But it's also something to keep in mind when writing them. The yandere character will always believe they are right, no matter what anyone else tells them, or no matter what evidence they see. They will change it to suit what they want to see. It's also important to consider how the yandere character shows their obsession towards the senpai character. And throughout your story, especially if this isn't really the main character, if this is just a side character or another part of your story, or even the villain of your story, consider how this obsession may be shown in really subtle ways. In many cases, a yandere character can even be used as a plot twist dynamic because they're so good at blending in with other people that when it is revealed that they are actually this yandere character, it can feel really unsettling or surprising. So when it comes to your yandere character showing their obsession, it should be done in really subtle ways. Maybe the yandere character keeps something that the senpai character lost. Maybe the yandere character has a collection of things that the senpai character lost. Maybe the yandere character gives the senpai character things. So whatever it is, the yandere character might also be always there when the senpai character is in danger or something's about to happen. The yandere character just always happens to be there. Even when the senpai character is doing something completely away from where anyone else would realize they're there. The yandere character still knows they're there and is still there looking out for them in their own way. But keep in mind too that this is extremely unhealthy and obsessive. So when you are creating this, it shouldn't be something cute. It should be something that feels a little bit unsettling, because it is very unsettling. And it's an unhealthy dynamic, but it is the way that yandere characters are presented. It's also important to consider your yandere character's goals. What are their main goals or motivations, and why are they so determined to get there? So in most cases, the yandere character's main goals will be that they want to be with their senpai in whatever way that makes sense. Maybe that means in a romantic way, so they want to be with their senpai. Maybe they just want to be really good friends with their senpai. Or maybe if they're part of the same family, they just want to make sure that the senpai character always relies on them, is always coming to them for help. So what kind of goal does the yandere character have, and how does this goal drive them in the story, making them more and more determined to control or manipulate the senpai character? As the story progresses, it's very likely that the yandere character would become more and more manipulative or obsessive. Typically, when you're creating a yandere character, the yandere character will become more and more obsessed or delusional as the story progresses. It usually won't go up, their character will usually go down as the story progresses. And so you have to consider what point they reach when the yandere character snaps. because the yandere character does snap at some point in the story. Usually, the yandere character snaps when they come to realize that the delusional world that they've created, that the way they see the world is actually false, that the senpai character doesn't like them, and that the other characters might be afraid of them, and this causes them to snap out of anger or fear or whatever they're feeling, and they will lash out at the other characters around them, whatever this means. Maybe this is them being super manipulative or controlling and just yelling at the other characters around them. It could be them lashing out in violence. Whatever it means, consider what happens when your yandere character snaps and what event needs to happen in order to cause this snap. It doesn't necessarily need to be a destruction of their delusional world either, especially if this is not a super obsessive yandere, because there can be less obsessive yanderes too. There can be yandere characters that may even seem quite normal. They're just a little bit obsessive, which is kind of unhealthy, but they're not to the extent where they are as controlling or manipulative as other yandere characters. Maybe for them, the snap comes when the senpai character rejects them, and they go, this character doesn't like me, and suddenly they spiral thinking about all of the reasons why the senpai character might not like them. So it's important when considering how your yandere character snaps. It's important to consider what kind of yandere character you're creating and what this would look like for your character. Because every character is different. Even when you're creating a yandere character, there's still so many factors that can influence the way your yandere character might react or respond to the other characters around them. When it does come to creating a yandere character who is dangerous in some way, who is trying to protect the senpai in their own way, then it's important to consider how the yandere character goes about keeping away other people that get between them and their senpai. And that's the main situation that usually applies when you're writing a yandere character. You will typically see that the yandere character will be keeping away other characters from their senpai in one way or another. This could be through violent tactics or through manipulative tactics. Personally, I feel like it's better or easier to lean towards the manipulative tactics because it would be less likely that the yandere character would get caught. If the yandere character is able to manipulate the other characters around them into staying away from their senpai, then it's going to be easier for the yandere character to eventually be with their senpai. But in many cases, the yandere character may also be very violent or dangerous and use those tactics to keep people away from their senpai. So it really depends on what kind of yandere you're creating and what kind of weapon of choice they would have. Because, as I mentioned before, in many cases they may have physical fighting skills or they may just be really manipulative or controlling. And of course, it also depends on your genre as well. If your story is more school-based or in a general life setting, then it may make more sense for your yandere to use more manipulative tactics. Whereas if you're creating something more like Future Diary, where it's reality mixed with a lot of supernatural aspects and the survival game elements of Future Diary, then it would make sense for your yandere character to use more violent tactics. So it really depends on your story and your genre and whether or not it makes sense for your story. So as your character goes through your story and either goes downhill as a yandere and becomes more obsessive or manipulative, they can also go the other way and they can also learn to become a better character. Now this is extremely rare and it also depends on what actions they took as a yandere, but there is a chance that they could heal as a yandere and become less obsessive if they are given the right conditions to do so. This would take a lot of self-thought and it would take a lot of them looking at themselves and really considering the elements of themselves that make them up as the yandere character. It would also depend on the senpai character as well, whether or not the senpai character is willing to give in to the yandere's manipulative tactics. If the yandere character is willing to look at themselves as a character and see their obsessive or manipulative nature, then it is possible that they can also go through the process of healing and redeem themselves as a character. But this is a difficult process and it's rather rare for a character. In many cases in a yandere story, it will usually have a negative ending, especially if the yandere character goes downhill throughout the story and becomes more obsessive or dangerous. Usually a manga or usually a story with a yandere character will end in one of two ways. Either the senpai character will be controlled or manipulated by the yandere, or the yandere character will end up killing the senpai character and losing themselves to that manipulation or delusion. So that's what happens if your yandere character goes downhill. But if the yandere character manages to redeem themselves, then there may be a potential of them walking away from the situation. But even if the yandere character manages to redeem themselves, it is still pretty unhealthy for them to end up with the senpai character, because that was them when they were living in their delusional manipulative state. So it would make more sense in the healthier way for the yandere character to realize the errors of their actions and then walk away from the situation in order to go and fix themselves or heal themselves or do whatever they need to do to learn to not obsess or manipulate the other characters around them. However, this also really depends on the type of yandere creating. If the yandere you're creating is not super manipulative or super dangerous, maybe they're just a slightly yandere character, then there is a strong potential that they could become a healthy character throughout the story if they learn to work through their yandere tendencies. So it's not impossible for the yandere character to have a happy ending. It just depends on what kind of yandere you're creating and how much this yandere character is dangerous or manipulative in order for them to be redeemed as a character. It all comes down to those kinds of factors. So yandere characters are extremely interesting characters to write in your manga, comic, or light novel. Whether you want to create a yandere character for the main character in your story, or just to act as a side character, or even the antagonist in your story, there are so many different potentials and ways to write this interesting character type. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of yandere characters you're creating, because I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure others would love to hear your thoughts too. Keep in mind that yandere characters are someone who really see the short-term goals and they make rash decisions. When it comes to protecting their senpai, they're more likely to make quick decisions when they think it really matters the most. Overall, there are many factors that come into play when writing this character type, and it really comes down to what kind of yandere you want to write and how you want them to appear in your story. It also comes down to your story genre, and this will determine how violent or dangerous your yandere character is. When in doubt, I recommend trying some different techniques with your yandere character, or studying yandere characters in other manga or anime, because there are so many different examples of different yanderes. But it's always important to consider that a yandere character does not always need to be outwardly dangerous or crazy, and a yandere character can be really subtle as well. It just depends on what kind of character you're looking at and what kind of character you really want to create. So thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!